Oh, wait, I did. Sydney property, I forgot. Okay, so enough about drugs. We'll talk about something that's a lot more corrupt. Sydney property prices. So you guys are getting screwed. By the time you guys graduate out of here and have enough money to buy a house, how the heck much do you think a house is going to go for? And are any of you be able to get one? Right? Think about it. Track out housing prices for a couple of years. Track out your incomes. Okay. So can elasticity tell us something about housing prices? So, I mean, downtown Sydney, right? Downtown Sydney property is already built up. There's no easy places that you could pick in downtown Sydney and say, hey, that place isn't built. So you might think then, okay, well, what does the supply curve for downtown Sydney housing price, downtown Sydney look like? Well, the answer is it's probably going to be pretty inelastic, meaning straight up and down. It doesn't matter how much prices rise. There's only a limited number of ways that you can create more Sydney housing, right? So I put a couple up there. You could fill in the bay. So you could pick bits of the Sydney Harbour that you didn't like, and you could start pushing dirt in. Right? That's the Tokyo solution. They've been slowly building. Tokyo's been expanding over time because they've been pushing the sea away by putting landfill into the ocean and making more Tokyo. You could do that in Sydney. We'd have to find some bits of the Sydney Bay that people don't like. Can you imagine how much they'd bitch if they found out, in fact, that waterfront housing wasn't, in fact, waterfront? Because you created a couple of acres of landfill in front of their place? How many pissed off lawyers do you think you'd have on your doorstep if you were the politician who put that forward? So that ain't going to happen. You could cut down green spaces. Again, good luck trying to do that in Sydney. You'll be slapped with so many environmental suits you won't see daylight. Right? You could knock down low-density residences and put in some high-density residences. Remember, the idea is, how can we pack more people into the city? Right? You can build up. But of course, nobody wants a high-rise next to their house. And so as soon as a developer comes into Sydney and proposes one of these things, what happens? There's neighborhood committees formed to block him or her, the development. The local council will be investigating everything. There'll be developer permits all over the place. It's a nightmare. So effectively, no, there's almost no way to create more housing in Sydney. Or if it is, it's a very slow process. So the supply curve for housing in Sydney looks like a straight line up and down. Okay, so there are always discussions about trying to make Sydney and Melbourne housing more affordable. So what people tried in a couple of states was basically to a first home buyer's grant. Basically, you just pick some people for whatever purpose, and then you give them money, and you say, go spend this on housing. Right? In this case, it was if you'd never bought a home before. So this was, I think, if this was the first time that you bought a house in your lifetime, they'd give you $7,000 to spend as a part of your down payment for your house. So the question is, does giving people more money in this sort of market make housing more affordable? I guess the question then is, on net, after they've paid the $7,000, is housing cheaper? And the answer, of course, is no. Actually, all they did was they made housing more expensive. Okay, how does this work? Well, again, think about this. Have your fixed amount of Sydney real estate, have a demand curve that's downward sloping like that. If you give buyers more money, what happens is that demand curve shifts out and up to the right. So what's going to happen is we give the new home buyers $7,000, which they promptly then put into the housing market to raise their bid for the house they want. So what's going to happen? Well, we predict, in fact, that the demand curve will rise by $7,000. Right? So what this is going to do is going to push up the demand curve by $7,000. What's going to happen? Well, the price of housing will rise by $7,000, exactly the amount of the first home buyer grant. The quantity of housing will remain completely unchanged. Who winds up with the $7,000? Whoever it is that's selling homes. So homes go up by precisely $7,000. You get the same home you would have gotten anyway, except that you pay $7,000 more for it, courtesy of the Australian, or it might have been the Victorian New South Wales state government, $7,000 that they gave you. So the New South Wales government gave $7,000 to all these first home buyers who promptly turned around and gave all that money to the person they were going to buy the house from anyway. So the guys who wound up with all the money were the people who owned the homes in the first place. Didn't help the first-time home buyers at all, because it simply raised the price they had to pay. Because all of the people, there's only a limited number of homes, everyone had to pay more for the homes that they did get.